Hello, we would like to welcome you to Face Sickle Cell. My name is Virginia Pertiller. I am the Executive Director for Citizens for Quality Sickle Cell Care. We are located in New Britain, Connecticut, but we service the northern part of Connecticut. So we welcome you to stay with us today. We have an awesome guest with us today. We're going to be talking about another aspect of sickle cell and how we can determine when our children are born who has sickle cell disease or sickle cell. Welcome.
Let's face it, there's a lot you don't know about sickle cell disease.
Like that it affects almost all races.
Like that it affects millions.
That it can be unbearable.
That it's the most common genetic blood disease in the country.
But awareness and understanding are still far too uncommon.
Let's face it, there's a lot you don't know about sickle cell disease.
And that's a disease too.
Call the 211 info line to learn more.
We would like to welcome you again to our show, Face Sickle Cell. Today I have with me a guest, Mr. Joseph Ubeki. And Mr. Joseph Ubeki, I want you to introduce yourself because I think you can do a better job at introducing yourself than I can. Would you please introduce yourself to our viewing audience?
My name, as you said, is Joseph Ubeki, and I'm the supervising microbiologist with the state of Connecticut Bioscience Department, and that takes care of genetic and metabolic disease screening for the state.
Okay, we're going to go into our discussion, which I think is really a discussion that needs to be had, because I can personally say that I have my youngest child is going to be 19 years old. So she just made it into the newborn screening program for Connecticut. But a lot of people perhaps don't even know about newborn screening in Connecticut. So could you please explain to our viewing audience what is newborn screening in Connecticut?
Newborn screening is a legislative mandate. The lawmakers mandated the Commissioner of Health for the state to institute screening for all children born in the state of Connecticut. So when a baby is born in any institution of the state, the sample, the blood sample, heel stick sample, is brought to the state lab where we do the screening. And we do have many analytes, what we call analytes, that signifies individual diseases as we go on. But in general, we do have about 37 analytes, which results into almost 47 diseases that we screen in the state of Connecticut.
Now let me ask you, when was sickle cell added on to this screening?
We started this screening in newborn screening in the early 60s in the state of Connecticut. But sickle cell, by 1985, there was a pilot study in Hartford here that resulted into selective areas of the state, screening in selective areas of the state. Subsequently, in 1988, some large hospitals, screening started in some large hospitals in the state. And then in 1990, the universal screening was mandated in the state of Connecticut. And by then, we usually send a sample to New York for the screening, and that later on was then brought back to the state when we have the personnel that are now able to run all our screening in the state.
Now when you say universal screening, that means that every hospital in the state of Connecticut has a newborn screening program.
When I say universal, it means that every child that is born in the state must be screened, because the hospitals by law are tasked to make sure that every child born in their own facility is screened. But through this, all children born in the state of Connecticut are all covered in the screening. So, and some that are born out of the facility are also screened. For instance, home birth. For instance, out-of-state birth. And adoptions. These are all screened. We have instituted means to make sure that all these kids are all covered.
Okay, that's very interesting. So any child born, say, starting 1990 would have been screened for sickle cell disease or sickle cell trait.
Absolutely.
And this is an important piece right here, because I think that anyone that was born prior to 1990 may not know their status.
That is true.
And so that means that there needs to be some testing that's done if they want to know their. How do they go about doing that? If you wanted to know and you did not, you don't have any idea what your status is.
You may have to go to a private lab to get tested if you don't know what your status is, because what we do with the state is newborn. And usually newborn is defined as first 28 days of life. So when you're actually looking at this, there was a time that we used to do adult hemoglobin, but due to layoffs and financial constraints in the state, that was suspended. And so all we do so far is newborns. So if you are an adult or a teenager, or rather somebody born before 1990, you definitely have to go to a private lab like Quest Diagnostics, or not that I'm making publicity for Quest, but at least these are the ones that we know at hand that you can go to and get tested instantly.
And what is the name of this particular test that they need to ask for if they should go to? I've heard one name was the electrophoresis. Is that the only one that really is sensitive to pick up the sickle cell?
No. Okay. We do have different kinds of technology in testing for hemoglobinopathies. Don't forget, hemoglobinopathies have a lot of different kinds of diseases involved in it, not just sickle cell. We have thalassemias, we have hemoglobin C diseases, and of course the SC, which is part of the sickle C disease. But sickle cell is just one aspect of the hemoglobinopathies. And so now, if you're looking for how do you do this test, we have different ways. One, with the state of Connecticut, we used to use isoelectric focusing for the test. But as technology improved, we transferred to using high-performance liquid chromatography. In the age of numbers and statistics, the number speaks more. When you are looking for the numbers in the hemoglobin of an individual, you want to assure that what you see is exactly significant. So if the fetal hemoglobin or adult hemoglobin ratios in that blood, or sickle hemoglobin in that blood, if you know the numbers, you have to really be assured that that child does have sickle cell or do not have sickle cell, because there are some individuals on birth that has very low numbers that you cannot even see on isoelectric focusing, but can pick it up immediately on high performance liquid chromatography. So that is a very sensitive instrument that we use today. And then where you have some questions, you can use isoelectric focusing to confirm or define that. There is also citrate agar that can be used, that are being used in some treatment facilities, but the most sensitive we know today is the high performance liquid chromatography.
And can you just describe at least just the electrophoresis. What happens when you go into a lab? What do they do?
The isoelectric focusing does have, in the instrumentation of it, has different parts. One is the electrophoretic chamber that has an anode and a cathode. Those who understand chemistry will be able to understand what I'm saying. But we also have a water chamber, a coolant that cools the isoelectric focusing chamber. So when electricity is passed through a gel, it enables the blood to migrate and then break down the components of the blood. In this aspect, you can read and figure out where the fetal hemoglobin is, where the adult hemoglobin is, the sickle hemoglobin or the C hemoglobin is. And of course, other components like fast bands that represent BARTs, who are bleeders also, and of course, hemoglobin E. You can also break down all parts of the hemoglobin in an isoelectric focusing when this is already done. So the chamber itself, but the isoelectric focusing is a subjective test. So those who are very used to the interpretation can look at it and says, well, I think there is a little A here, I think there is a little S here, and this person will say, I don't think I can see any A here. So it lends itself to questioning sometimes. Some of them are very clear, so you don't have any problem, it's just like it runs. You see it. But some where you have the gray zone, it's questionable, and you need a second kind of test to really define it. That's why in the high performance liquid chromatography, it is very clear. The numbers are there because the instrument will spill out all the numbers and you can pick it out instantly.
Okay, so then the other piece that I wanted to get at was when someone, say for instance myself, I go into a diagnostic center and I want to be tested. Is it a simple needle prick of the finger? Is it blood drawn from the arm? What happens to the person who goes in for this test? For
newborns, we prefer the heel stick.
The heel stick.
Period. Because the heel stick is the best. That gives us the best result.
Okay.
Not just for hemoglobinopathies, but for other tests that we run in the state. We have fatty acid oxidative diseases that we run. We have organic acidurias that we run. We have amino acidurias that we run. These are all technical things, but again, these are different phases of diseases that we have out of the 47 diseases that we have. Many things like biotinidase, sugar, galactosemia. So when you're collecting a sample, we're not collecting it specifically for sickle cell. So with the newborn, the heel stick is the best. But for an adult, the ones that they used to bring to us before is just the same way they bring the newborns, but this time it's not the heel stick. Some of them do finger prick, and then put it on the card and bring to us. So it depends on who is collecting the sample. I am not where they collect the sample, but I do receive the sample. So I do tests, and in any blood, even if you have a whole blood and you stick it on the card, it will still do the same for me.
Okay. All right, we're going to take a short break and we'll come back. We want to talk about some other things that happens once a baby is detected with any one of the 47 diseases. What happens from the state perspective. So please stay with us. We'll be right back.
Let's face it, there's a lot you don't know about sickle cell disease.
Like that it affects millions.
People in almost all races.
Black and white.
Indian and Asian,
Hispanic and Mediterranean,
and that it can affect you or someone you love.
no matter where you come from.
Let's face it, there's a lot you don't know about sickle cell disease.
And that's a disease too. Call the 211 info line to learn more.
Welcome back. I'm Virginia Patiller, Executive Director for Citizens for Quality Sickle Cell. We're so happy that you chose to join us today. We're in discussion today regarding newborn screening program in Connecticut, and I have a special guest with me today, Mr. Joseph Ubaiki, who is a microbiologist, and he's going to be discussing some of the aspects of newborn screening in Connecticut. Welcome back again. So the question that I have is, what happens when a newborn baby has been detected with sickle cell disease?
In the state of Connecticut, excuse me, our program is in what we call the 3 T's, the testing, the tracking, and the treatment. Now, we have seen the testing. When the testing is done and you have a screen significant, we prefer to call it screen significant because we can't say it's positive until it is confirmed by the treatment center or the hematologist in the case of sickle cell. So the second T kicks in gear, which is the tracking. The results that I screened significant will be sent to the tracking department, which is composed of nurse consultants. These nurse consultants will then take the result and call the PCP, which is the primary care physician or provider for that child that we just screen significant. They will call the PCP and tell the PCP of the result. The PCP will then have within 1 week to contact the parents and then of course the treatment center. And then the treatment center composes of the hematologist and those who follow up, like those who give the counselors that really advises this family of the options or whatever they have on that baby. One of the situations is that the major intermediary there is the PCP, and the PCP will contact the parents. 1 week later, the state will then contact the parents with a letter. But before then, the PCP is given that week to be able to get in contact with their patient and then tell them of what the result is so that they can then move into the treatment phase.
And what is usually the treatment phase? Is there a basis of where treatment begin, or is there a certain type that is common, universal for any baby that's detected with sickle cell disease?
The treatment phase is when the patient is visited, when the patient visits the treatment center after the notification. These patients are being followed up by the hematologist. Each treatment center set their own policy on how to follow the patient. We do have 2 treatment centers in the state. One is the CCMC, Sickle Cell Center, and the other one is the Yale Sickle Cell Center. So these 2 have their policies on how they follow up their patients.
Okay, all right. So if a result comes back with a sickle cell trait, is that the same kind of response for someone who has come back with a positive for sickle cell trait?
No.
Okay.
It's not the same kind of response. However, the first still remains the same. For instance, the tracking group will still write to the PCP and fax the result to the PCP, that's the primary care provider. And then the primary care provider will contact the parents. 1 week later again, we will send a letter to the parents notifying them of the finding. So the primary care provider has now have the opportunity to contact the parents of this child.
That's great to know. The other thing that came into my mind as you were talking about that is we know there's a lot of young people who are making decisions to have children, maybe not even deciding it, just, you know, behavior presents them with an issue. And so that PCP might not be in place, a primary care provider or, you know, physician. So I want to say, what I want to say is that we have a group of people, our young people in our communities who are who have teenage pregnancies, and there's others who do not have any pre-planning, so there's no prenatal that's going in place. Some of our young people are having children long before they even let anyone know, a PCP, their parents. And I'm just reaching out right now to say that it is very key that we begin to ask questions before we get into behaviors that can create an avalanche of other issues that comes back to other people in terms of the state, the community, families. I just wanted to put that out there because I know that is really key with a lot of babies being born and parents not having that information and not really talking or discussing with their potential partner whether they have the trait or not. As a matter of fact, what I've been finding is that people who are having children with sickle cell disease, they knew they had the trait, but they didn't have that conversation. And so when they had their child, then they found out that my child has sickle cell disease, and then they remember, I was told I had the trait, but I never had the discussion with my mate.
Yeah, I am very grateful to hear that at least there is a follow-up by primary care providers as well as parents in notifying their teenage or adult children of the results that they received maybe 19 years ago, 17 years ago, or 20 years ago. One of the problems we find very often is that in receiving samples, some or many of the parents don't have any pediatrician in place before they delivered. So when you now go to figure out who do you contact in case there is a significant finding in the test, you don't have anybody. So now you have to go back to the hospital because sometimes the hospital have already asked them, who do you contact if you need a pediatrician? In some cases, it is the hospital primary care that they have to go back to. In many cases, they have already moved on to their different communities with no pediatrician. So now, somehow, a letter has to be sent to the parents and say, you need to tell us who your pediatrician is so you can go forward, and here is what the situation is. It's difficult when you don't have a pediatrician because that's our first line of contact if we do have a screen significant. Why? Because the doctors are apt to explain to the patients what this looks like. If you allow the patients to receive something like isovaleric acidemia, their head is already shifting like, wow, my baby is dying, what is this? They don't understand. But the doctors can explain it in a better language that they are calm while taking care of a screen significant baby. So it is very important to have a pediatrician, and I think that the obstetricians and the gynecologists during the follow-up should really step it up to most of the patients that they are seeing so that they can have at least a pediatrician before delivery.
Very good. And I think this is a piece of the discussion that becomes very critical to the communities.
Yes.
Because of what we know, the significance of what sickle cell is and what it can do to an individual living with it. And so to detect it early and to know how to start your whole health care plan, is very key. And that's one of the things that our organization tries to do very well in terms of referring people who contact our organization to a primary care provider or a medical home so that they can get the consistent health care needs that they might encounter. And it could be beyond sickle cell. It could be just going for a common cold or something like that, but everyone needs to have a primary care provider or physician. Wow, okay. Let's talk about Connecticut in terms of statistics. How many newborns have been detected? Let's go to last year if you have I don't know if you have the count for last year, but can we just go to 2009?
In 2009, this time I have to look at the numbers. I do have 12 newborns with sickle cell disease. We have 8 with sickle cell hemoglobin C disease, and 1 S beta plus thalassemia. Also identified are 4 hemoglobin C disease and 3 hemoglobin E disease. In terms of traits, that's carriers, we have 600 sickle traits. We have 209 hemoglobin C traits. We have 42 hemoglobin E trait and 13 hemoglobin D trait. If you put all the traits together, we have 1 in 59 for the ratio of the frequency of the traits itself. So it is very significant, but then again, that's where all the counseling helps for the future.
Now, out of those numbers that you just gave us, what was the approximate number of births last year?
About 43,000. 43,000 babies.
In the state of Connecticut. That's awesome. Since the implementation of the newborn screening program, there has been some discussion, and I know about fundings and how to keep this program viable. Is there any new goals being set by the state of Connecticut to find better equipment, better testings, any research that's being done related to newborn screening?
Yes, we keep fine-tuning the program. Money-wise, we don't have any additional, even though we previously were charging $28 per screen, and then recently was moved to $56 per screen. All the money goes to the public coffin except what the legislators permitted for retention of buying of kits. So we still hope that in a later date that they will permit us to retain more money, so that because the technology is changing very fast and we need more money to sustain those technology. We have in the past changed from isoelectric focusing screening to high performance liquid chromatography screening, which is an advanced technology, and this also costs a lot of money, but we believe we want the best for the state, so we will change with the technology as we go on. Internally, we have also been looking at different things. For instance, we hope that we will be able to do some DNA testing for the hemoglobinopathies. That means for every screen significant that we have, we can put it through DNA testing in the department before we can even go reporting it. Yes, the treatment centers do confirmatory testing when they get this screen significant to say, yes, it is now a positive baby. In most cases, or in almost all cases, we match very well, because when we pull up FS, ultimately it comes out to be FS. So we are very glad to see that at least whatever we screen significant pull-up is confirmed positive. In some aspects, we still have some of the questions that still comes in. For instance, during the summer, we have an avalanche of fast band. What we call fast band may be a degradation of hemoglobin, and heat degrades hemoglobin. And so when this happens, you have make a view of whether this is truly a fast band or just hemoglobin degradation due to heat. Fast bands can be serious because fast bands in the terms of it means BARTs, B-A-R-T-S. BARTs can be bleeders, and these are serious situations you just don't ignore. But then again, because of that, to be very specific, we did a study in the department, and the study we did was to find where is the best cutoff that we can determine that these samples are truly true BARTs, or these samples are just hemoglobin degradation due to heat. And we're able to have a very conservative cutoff that in many cases the hematologist is convinced that when we call fast bands, they take it very serious. We did the study with confirmation of Dr. Pearson in Yale New Haven. So it was presented to them in a genetic advisory committee meeting. With the genetic advisory committee meeting, we are able to fine-tune things every quarterly when they can critique everything that we do, or if there is anything that they need to say, good job and keep doing it that way, and we go that way. So we work in concert with all the treatment centers and sometimes the provider. So
wonderful. Well, in closing, I would like to just ask if you would like to share anything in relations to your job working with newborn screening, sickle cell in particular, that you would like to share with the viewing audience before we close.
Newborn screening is very exciting to me because it's challenging. The challenges go beyond just go to work. And so I advise all my staff that once a sample hits the state lab, we stand on our toes and keep running until that sample has a result. And so doing it this way has enabled us to really be on top of everything, that nothing is hanging. There are some diseases, not sickle cell, there are some diseases that if you don't pick out within 7 days or 7 to 10 days of birth, the baby dies. Like 17-hydroxyprogesterone, CAH, congenital adrenal hyperplasia. If the baby is not picked up on time, the baby will die within 7 to 10 days. And it's because of salt wasting, and it is serious. Sometimes the sample does not hit the state lab within 5 days of birth. Yet we do have UPS that the state paid for to go to every facility of birth in the state to pick up those samples. So we will hope that all facilities really make sure that the sample gets to us on time. And so we can be able to give the answer on time and save the baby, because the ultimate goal is to pick out this and intervene before it becomes a problem for the newborn.
This has been a wonderful conversation, and I want to thank you for coming in. You have ignited me into thinking of some things that I had not even thought of before, and I'm sure our viewing audience perhaps has been enlightened to Connecticut's newborn screening program. Before I close, I want to ask this one last question. In the United States, is every state does every state have a newborn screening program?
Yes. In the United States, in the 50 states, every state has. One of the situations is that newborn screening is very costly. And because it's very costly, some states cannot afford to do it themselves. So they contract it out to other states.
I see.
And when they do that, it's still done for their citizens. There is still newborn screening for their citizens, but it's not done in the state. So when it's contracted out, it's done and the result is sent back to the state. So there are other countries that wanted some of the states here to do it for them. There was a time that we had a request from the U.S. military to do it in the state of Connecticut. I do know that perhaps one state in the union is doing it for the military presently. The reason why we didn't jump at it at that time was due to the layoffs. So we suddenly had a layoff and we didn't have the manpower to carry it out by then. But I hope future opportunities will come.
That would be great.
To deal with that. We have the ability in the states to do it, and other tests are being added as we go on. There are potential tests like lysosomal disorders, storage disorders that are being considered, like the Krabbe disease, the Gaucher's disease. All these things are being considered in addition to SCID, severe combined immunodeficiency disease, the so-called bubble child that we had before. So these things are up in the horizon, but as we go on, these things may be added, because newborn screening is massively expanding, exploding across the United States and the world. So we are constantly having a national symposium, international symposiums, and to make sure that everybody is abreast with the new things that are coming out. And presentations are being done. I do know that in Orlando, Florida, this year, in May, we are going to have the national newborn screening. So hopefully there are new things that comes out that we can embrace.
Great. Okay, well, I would like to thank you again for joining me today on Face Sickle Cell. We would like to thank our viewing audience for joining us today. There's so much. I have so many more questions, and perhaps you'll come back again and we can kind of have a phase 2, because I now have many more questions that I'm sure you, as our listening and viewing audience, have come upon just listening to this conversation. So we want to thank Mr. Joseph Ubeki for joining us today. You have faced sickle cell. I am Virginia Pertiller. I'm the Executive Director with Citizens for Quality Sickle Cell. We're located at 100 Arch Street in New Britain, Connecticut. Our website is www.cqscc.org. Our phone number is area code 860-223-7222. We would like to hear from you. If you have any comments or concerns or questions, please give us a call. And again, thank you for joining us today.